Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. Joining me once again is Richie Schneiderite. I am your co-host, Mike Broadbent. Richie, our final football game, mercifully, of the season is this Saturday at Maryland. We're going to preview that. We have Scott Greene coming on from the Maryland Rivals site shortly. We had a basketball game last night where Rutgers once again looked like the team they looked like the first three games of the season. But first, let's do a little sponsor read. This podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. Basketball season is back, and BetOnline continues to be your number one resource for all your sports wagering needs. BetOnline is your go-to resource for all sports betting, including NBA, NFL, NBA, college football, and MMA and golf. Sorry, I'm going off the top of my head here. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events. You can head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure you use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
And our other sponsorship, as always, it's Adam Goldman. He's the franchise coach. If you're tired of that 9-to-5 job, sitting in that cubicle all day, every day, hit him up. He can help you change your entire career and kind of give you your own type of American dream. You can kind of own your own business. You can kind of go in basically any direction with this, whether it be food industry. I know I always say medical supplies, but there's so many things you can do. You can even start your own like kind of bookie service, I guess, if you really want to. That one might be a little difficult, but that one might be a little bit more difficult to start. But if you want to change your career up, give them a call today, 844-800-3726 or franchisecoach.net.
All right, so let's start with some basketball. Last night, Rutgers had a game at Jersey Mike's. They played Rider. They were like a 15.5 point underdog, or they were 15.5 point favorite in that game. They ended up winning 76-46. Rutgers had a huge bounce back. They looked better than they have. They looked arguably the best they have all season. What did you see last night out of Rutgers that made you think that they're back on the right track?
They hit threes. They finally made a couple more than one three in the game, which was nice. Mind you, it still wasn't good. 33% from three is not anything to brag about, but that was nice. They moved the ball a lot better. Rebounding was pretty decent. I wouldn't say great because they almost got out-rebounded by this Rider team after all said and done. It continues to be a problematic area for the team. Yeah, I know Cliff obviously gets his double digits, which is nice, but I would love to see him be more aggressive down there on the boards especially. But no, I think we saw Cliff be typical Cliff. Like he's pretty much mastered the interior game, I guess, on offense. But his defense is still a little bit lackluster, in my opinion. I think he needs to step it up there. Derek Simpson played pretty well. Mawant Mag's not taking any crazy shots like he did the past couple games. He was taking what he could do, and he didn't take many. I think he only took like 3 or 4, but. He played well, and some of these guys really didn't play all that well because the starters contributed most of the points, minus Woolfolk, who rising star. I guess we could put him in that category.
He was probably the most impressive guy for me last night.
Yeah, near double-double in just 19 minutes. There's a former 3-star football recruit that was literally playing football at this time last year.
Yep.
It is insane that he's been so good and just developed so nicely. I still think the bench is a concern, but I'm going to table that one for later in the season just because you're missing McConnell and Mulcahy, so probably Simpson comes off, Hyatt comes off. Wolfolk's been pretty solid, but Cam Spencer still he's that guy. He is him, if you want to call him that, but he's been the leader of this team so far, and I think everything. I'm not going to toot my own horn here too much, but everything I said in our preseason stuff has been pretty spot on. I said Reaver's a backup. Which it kind of is. I said Cam Spencer's almost leading the team in points. If not leading, it would be Cliff. I said Cliff's going to average a double-double. He's basically doing that. So, I mean, I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. I have been pretty fucking spot on.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought they played outstanding defense last night. They continued to just totally shut down passing lanes. They had a ton of blocks. Like, this team just gets so many steals. It's just when you have a team that's overmatched size-wise, like Ryder was last night, it's just impossible to get passes into guys, especially on the interior in the paint. I do think three-point shooting from one player was really good. So Cam Spencer was 4 for 7 from 3. The rest of the team was 1 for 8. So that continues to be a concern. I do think once once McConnell and once Paul come back, we will be like 9 or 10 deep, which is probably the deepest team Pike has had in terms of actual guys who can step in and give you good minutes. So you have obviously the starting 5 right now. Then you have Woolfolk, you have Jalen Miller, you have Dean Reber, and then you have the 2 guys who are currently hurt. So this team, I know that Joe Lenardi has, you were mentioning this earlier, he has currently 10 Big Ten teams in the tournament right now, and Rutgers is not one of them. I think that's absolutely preposterous. I think it's more likely that Rutgers wins the Big Ten than misses the NCAA tournament this year. I don't think that's hyperbolic. I just think we're a really good team. We're veteran-led. We're deep. This is a team that could make some noise into the tournament. Cliff has really taken that next step. He's probably the best big man in the Big Ten right now. Cam Spencer might be, one of the top 5 scorers in the Big Ten. So this is a team that's going to be dangerous all season. I'm really excited to see what they look like against some top competition.
Yeah, that's a pretty big hot take from Joe Lenardi. I know it's so early in the season, and it does get fans riled up a little bit just seeing like a projection that's in November still. Like you got a lot of time to go. But I mean, obviously, just looking at the schedule, losing to a 100 level team in like Temple, it's not going to help. It's not Lafayette bad. It's not going to kill your entire like chances at the tournament, but it's definitely not going to help you make the tournament either. Yeah. But I think, as I said last time in our last pod, this team has always been pretty good with adversity, and they've always bounced back really well, these Pike teams. So this loss against Temple, and then you win against Rider by 30, you probably beat Central Connecticut State by 30. And then it's going to come down to these Miami, Indiana, Ohio State, Seton Hall, Wake Forest. Like, that's a tough stretch. Now, will they bounce back and just dominate in a couple of these? Who knows? Like, it's tough to say, but I think in order to do that, you're definitely going to need your two starters back, especially Paul, because the ball just wasn't moving at all versus Temple. It moved better versus Rider, but it's still you need a facilitator, and you don't really have one at the moment.
Yeah, no, the first 3 games of the season where Paul was kind of the primary facilitator it was kind of like, I hate to get all like flowery with this. It was kind of like watching like poetry. Like the guys were moving the ball so well. They got those extra passes in. They always seemed to find a wide open shooter. Obviously we're playing against pretty poor competition in those games too, but the offense looked crisp. Like everything looked like it was firing on all cylinders. So it is nice for Derek Simpson, honestly, to get these minutes early in the season when the games don't matter as much. So when it's later in the season we need them, it works out. Scott Greene, what's going on, man? Appreciate you coming on to help us preview the Maryland football game against Rutgers this weekend.
I'm doing all right. How you guys doing?
Not too bad. We were just
no complaints.
Wrapping up some basketball talk here. So Maryland is 6-5 on the season. They've already wrapped up a bowl appearance. So this game is kind of meaningless for both teams. A little bit more meaningful for Maryland, who might be able to get a little bit better of a bowl with a win. Tell us a little bit about how the season's gone for Maryland overall, and just where this team stands in Week 12.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's been a bit of an improvement over last season. I mean, obviously they got a chance to win 4 regular season Big Ten games, which would be the most under Loxley yet. But, obviously they really struggled there in those 2 road games coming off the bye. Played well against Ohio State and Michigan, obviously came up short in both those games. But, you say it's not a huge game for Maryland, but I mean, I hate to say it, getting to 7 regular season wins is gigantic for Loxley. I mean, it's something he kind of has to do at this point, given where they were after 8 games. So I actually think this is a huge game for Maryland and one that they're going to be really up for. So, I mean, I get it in the grand scheme of things. They're already in a bowl, but I think for a lot of reasons, this is a big game for them.
I guess let's just start off with the offense. Talia, just tell me about him. How good has he been this season? I know obviously there's a lot of hype preseason about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been pretty good. Obviously most games, throwing out, again, those 2 games on the road against Wisconsin and Penn State. Other than that, has been pretty good. He looked pretty good last weekend against Ohio State, except for maybe that last play. But, I'm just going to say it. I think a lot of the issues he had weren't really necessarily his issues, but issues in front of him. The offensive line returned 6 starters this year, basically. They were good at the beginning of the season. They've really struggled of late. And, I've kind of been talking to this about some people. I feel like the left tackle Jalen Duncan got a lot of the hype in the preseason. But with their starting left guard, Mason Lunsford, out for those 2 games, simply put, the offense fell apart. They were awful. And with him back this last game against Ohio State, they looked good again. So I'd actually say Mason Lunsford is possibly the most important guy in that offense right now. He's back. He's healthy. He looked good against Ohio State. So I think obviously that's good news for them, this weekend.
So you guys have probably played Michigan and Ohio State in terms of like both teams, the closest of any teams all season. What do you think was the reason for that? Is it because you have such a high-powered offense that you're able to kind of keep up score-wise?
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think, too, at least in the Michigan game, if you go and look at the stats, Maryland's very penalty-prone. And, the Michigan game, they had one game, they had one penalty, and that wasn't, I believe, until late in the fourth quarter. So I think that had a played a big part as far as Michigan. Ohio State, it was by far the best crowd they've had, this season, and the fans were really into it. So I think having, a loud home crowd really played a part last weekend. But I think those are kind of 2 of the key reasons that they were really able to keep those games close.
And I know I just asked you about the quarterback, but I also want to talk about, and you talked about the offensive line, but what we didn't talk about was the skill position players. Rakeem Jarrett is just phenomenal between last year and this year. He's it looks like he's settled down a little bit this year. Is it just a matter of the receptions getting kind of thrown around more, or?
Yeah, I feel like, obviously I think everyone between the 3 of us knows how talented he is. He was a 5-star coming into College Park, was really good last year, obviously the team's leading receiver. He's had some moments this year. I feel like part of it is when there have been breakdowns on the offense, I feel like he's kind of just gotten, it's mental. He's just kind of gotten frustrated. You really see it in his run blocking. It's normally very good. He's one of the best run blockers on the team on the outside. It hasn't been good the last few games. And I think that kind of leads me to believe that, some of it's kind of mental, and that, he's a little frustrated that he hasn't maybe been getting as many looks as he was earlier in the season. But, the talent's there. He's going to be a pro. He's going to play on Sundays. He's still, talent-wise, I think by far the most talented receiver on the team.
So you guys started off 6-2. Like you said, after 8 games, you guys, I don't know if you were ranked at any point this year, but you were really close to being ranked. What has it been over the last quarter of the season, or the last third of the season, that you've seen this big drop off? Because you've lost 3 straight games. The Penn State game was a really poor performance by you guys. What would you point to as being the main reason for the 3 games?
Yeah, first, obviously in the 2 road losses, you got to talk about the weather. Wisconsin, obviously it was the biggest factor. There was like 25 mile an hour sustained winds, like 50 mile an hour gusts. Wet balls. I think as far as Wisconsin, I think for both teams, that was the biggest factor. Penn State, again, it was wet and cold, but I think after the weather, I think I kind of already touched on it. I think not having starting left guard Mason Lunsford there, and then just basically having to shift everyone over on the offensive line, especially at center where they've had some issues this year anyways. So now you're playing with a new center, a new left guard, and I just feel like it really affected the protection up front. As bad as Tagovailoa was, and he struggled. And I think mentally and throwing the ball, he struggled. I don't think it was all physical. I think a lot of it was in his head. But, the guy was running for his life in 2 of those games and a bit last week as well. So, I feel like the biggest issue was just the protection up front on offense. And you saw it against Ohio State with Lunsford back there starting at left guard and guys back in the regular positions. The offense looked much better again.
And then just flipping to the other side of the ball, I know obviously the numbers don't show this defense being that good. I think they're giving up 26.3 points per game. But after watching last week, Tarheeb Still is the Jersey boy is pretty good lockdown corner for the most part. But obviously it was a tough Ohio State game. But can you just talk about this side of the ball?
Yeah, when you talk about the defense, I think the strength is definitely on the back end. I would say the starting safeties, Dante Schrader Jr. and Bo Braid, they've both been really good, especially for first-year starters and being younger guys. Trader's a phenomenal athlete. Braid's a big hitter back there. And then, like you kind of mentioned, you talk about also the corners, the guys on the outside. Jacorian Bennett, I mean, he's one of the best corners in the country. I believe he still leads the nation in pass breakups. Has a couple interceptions this year. He's really good, big physical corner. And then, you kind of touched on it. Tarheeb still as well. He plays some nickel, plays some on the outside, but, he's a very talented corner, able to really lock guys down as well. So I feel like, the back end, the corners and the safeties are really the strength of this defense this year.
So I think this game opened up as Maryland is like a 14-point favorite. I don't know if the line shifted at all. So obviously Maryland is a heavy favorite here. How do you see this game playing out? Kind of give us your expectations for kind of the score and how the game actually goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I haven't seen too much of Rutgers this year. What I have seen, honestly, they haven't looked that bad. But, that said, where I had no expectations for Maryland heading into that Ohio State game, now that I've seen the offense with Lunsford back along the offensive line, I feel a lot better about where they kind of stand heading into this one. And being at home, and like I said, being kind of more important, I think, for this team than people might feel. I feel like 14 points is probably about right. I think Rutgers is going to score some. They might be in it for a while, but I feel like eventually Maryland's offense should have enough firepower at the skill positions to hopefully, kind of pull ahead there at the end and maybe come away with, say, a 28 or 35-14 type victory, I think.
That's fair.
It's probably about right. So I wanted to ask you, what's the feeling like among the Maryland fan base for this game? I know Rutgers fans kind of want to make this a trophy game, a rivalry game. It's already the last game of the season every year now at this point. So how do you feel about making it a rivalry, and what do the fans feel about it?
I feel like most of the fans just kind of feel like Rutgers, I mean, I hate saying this, but I almost feel like they think Rutgers is being kind of a forced rivalry. Obviously, I feel like they want Penn State to be the rivalry. And they the games, they date way back like 50, 60 years. So there's definitely more history with Penn State. That said, it's pretty lopsided history. I don't know. I feel like the fans feel like it's kind of forced, but, especially when you look at the makeup of the students. I mean, there are a ton of kids from Jersey that go to Maryland. So I feel like it is kind of the more natural rivalry, and it might take some time, but I think eventually, fans are going to grow into it.
What you've described is basically exactly how Rutgers fans feel. Like, the Maryland game feels like the rivalry that's forced. We want to be rivals with Penn State. Penn State doesn't really care about us. The lopsided history speaks for itself, and until we start winning consistently, like we haven't beaten Penn State since '88. I know you guys beat them. I want to say in like
2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, 2 years. Sorry, so 2020. And was that the no handshake game?
No, that
kickoff?
Was the one before that.
Or was that a different year?
I want to say like 2016 or 17, maybe.
Okay, so you guys have beaten them a decent amount the last few years. So the rivalry is more legitimate for you guys with Penn State than us. But I do want to pivot to
the thing that's kind of funny to me is just because I've got some Penn State folks on my in-law side of the family. But
I'm sorry.
You talk to them, and they all think like Ohio State's their rival. It's like my best friend played for Ohio State. They don't give a rat's ass about Penn State. Like,
well, that's the weird thing is Penn State finds itself like in this limbo where they're like the third best team in the conference, but none of the top two feel like they're the rival with Penn State. Maybe Michigan a little bit more because they've had some close games, but yeah, they're in like the same state as us, just a little more elevated. I do want to talk to you about a few just general athletic department stuff with Maryland. Tell us a little bit about what the NIL collective scene is with Maryland and just NIL in general at Maryland and how our fans are kind of approaching this new era of recruiting in all sports.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Maryland definitely started off behind the eight ball. It definitely took them a while to kind of get the ball rolling. But, at this point, they've got 3 solid collectives. There's actually one, pretty big one, obviously for football. They had some big donors that started one for basketball, and believe it or not, they've actually started a pretty successful collective for lacrosse as well. which you probably don't think you probably see at a lot of schools. But given their success, not really surprising.
I mean,
but
you guys had like one of the best seasons ever for college lacrosse this past year.
Exactly.
So I believe it.
So you've got three pretty good big collectives at the moment. I think football. I think they have the potential to have a lot of success bringing guys in. I mean, obviously, you've got Kevin Plank, helping back that. So Under Armour, working there. And same a little bit for basketball, but basketball has got a huge following, not just down here, but especially in the New York City area, which I think helps a lot. So, like I said, they definitely started behind the 8 ball, but they've got 3 solid collectives now going. I think they're definitely going to help and be successful going forward.
To kind of piggyback off that one, I want to talk about this one specifically. The Best is Ahead Foundation. It's more about help. Can you explain it a little bit? I know I'm just reading it like right now, but it's just more about helping the guys after college.
Well, not even necessarily, but they want the guys to kind of get out in the community and kind of help out, with some charities and things like that. And it's about helping them after college. But obviously, they're going to get some help now too as well. And like I said, I think Under Armour will play a part in that. But it's not just about getting them paid now up front. It's about helping them, land high-paying jobs afterwards. Being in the DC area, there are a lot of high-paying jobs. And I mean, you guys know Rutgers up in that area as well. But there are a lot of high-paying jobs in this area, and there are a lot of influential folks that can help people land these jobs. So it's not just about getting cash up front. Also helping them get to a position where they're making a lot of money for the long term.
Yeah, tell that to Miami and Texas A&M. I didn't name them, but
I want to talk a little bit about Maryland basketball. Obviously, you guys had a coaching hire in the offseason. You hired coach Rutgers fans are very familiar with, and former Seton Hall coach Kevin Willard. And it seems like he's done a great job turning you guys around in the first year there. You guys are 5-0 right now. You ranked 23rd in the country. You just beat a team that we're actually going to play in the near future in Miami on the road. You kicked the shit out of them. I think it was like 88-70. Tell us a little bit about how you feel Willard's doing. What's the vibe on Willard? And can you tell us a little bit about the Maryland Miami game? Because since we play them, Rutgers fans will be interested in hearing how you guys think Miami plays.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say I love Isaiah Wong. I think he's a tremendous player. They've got
Jersey
some
boy.
talent. That said, they couldn't rebound. I mean, Maryland just dominated on the boards, which is a bit surprising because Maryland's pretty much on the small side and doesn't have much of a front court. But it's pretty much as simple as that. They dominated on the boards and hit their threes, and that was that. I mean, it was pretty much over from the start. As far as Willard, he's a guy. I mean, I'll be honest. I started hearing his name as a likely successor to Turgeon, almost a year before Turgeon even kind of walked out. My guess is Under Armour had a little bit to do with that. And I think it was kind of time, given the success. And, some people say he didn't have a lot of success, but I mean, it's Seton Hall. I mean, come on. It's a tough place to win, and he was winning. So, one thing that wasn't really talked about, too, is, his winning percentage he had against the Big Ten before he got here was phenomenal. So hopefully that carries over. But, I mean, I'll be honest. I even think in most of his proponents' wildest dreams, they could have figured he was going to do what he's done so far. I mean, he's landed 3 4-star top 100 guys for next year's class. He brought in a big-time transfer who went to DeMatha, and he's just completely changed the culture. I mean, I hate to say it, but Mark Turgeon, for example, this time of year, guys were taking weeks off during Thanksgiving. I mean, literally not practicing. Going home for Thanksgiving, not practicing. And to be honest, it showed. I mean, you could tell guys weren't learning sets maybe like they should have, and they looked like they had maybe taken some time off. There's none of that with Kevin Willard. I mean, you go hard for 2 hours during practice, you bust your ass during games, and if you don't play. And he's installed a lot of new stuff. They're running full court pressure now, which they didn't do at all under Turgeon. Switching things up on defense. And they really kind of have an identity. They bring the ball up quickly, they run a quick set, and then they look for an open shot. And this team just really didn't have any sort of identity under Turgeon. I get it. They had talent and they won games, but for 10 years there was no identity, and he's kind of brought that back. So I'll be honest, I think fans are thrilled. I think even the ones that weren't on board are thrilled, and I think the future's bright based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I know you mentioned some of the transfer guys, but Dante Scott, he just keeps improving every year?
I mean, he struggled last year, and I think part of it was, what happened with Turgeon, having Danny Manning come in. One of the younger guys talked about it in the preseason when I was talking with him, but he said, when Manning came in, a lot of guys were just looking to get theirs and to get into the starting lineup, and it kind of showed. I mean, there was no cohesion in that team last year. This year, guys have all bought in, playing together. But yeah, you talk about Scott. I mean, he's lost 40 pounds since last season. Really worked on his body.
Wow.
And for whatever reason, Willard recruited him hard out of high school. But when you ask him about it, he's like, well, I didn't really have any kind of relationship with him. Well, it seems like they've got a great relationship right off the bat, and it's showing.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit shocked at how quickly Willard has changed a lot of what's going on, because you guys have been soft for the last couple years. You had the 2019-2020 season. Was that the Jalen Smith year?
Yeah, that was the year that they won. They were in a three-way tie for the Big Ten regular, the COVID year, three-way tie for the title.
Yeah, and I feel like ever since then, you guys are just I don't know if Turgeon just kind of lost steam, or if that was kind of I don't know what happened, but ever since that moment, when we beat you guys, I want to say late in the season, it seems like that was the last time I really felt oh man, we got to play Maryland this weekend. This is going to suck. Every other time the last couple of years, it's been this is an easy game for us, which is not typically what Maryland is.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I feel like part of the issue too, I mean, I hate to say it, but when you talk to, local power brokers behind the scene those last few years under Turgeon, I mean, they were out on them. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They didn't like what they saw. They didn't want to send their kids here. I mean, and it was starting to show in recruiting. It was almost like there was no point even recruiting the local kids because you weren't getting them. So I think that played a big part too.
So I know there was this video that kind of went viral a couple weeks ago against Binghamton, that the empty stands completely. And I know even Geo Baker retweeted it at one point. I'm assuming that has changed since the 5-0 start and the couple big wins, or is it just a Binghamton game and that's why? And it's who cares?
I mean, it's a combination of things. I mean, first of all, no one knew. Well, I guess to start, this team didn't really have high expectations to begin with. Then you got to factor in, a lot of these games are weeknight games, not on TV. You got the DMV, you got the Capital Beltway. I mean, it's a nightmare. Just, I mean, to get 7-8 miles can take you an hour during rush hour. Yeah, so I mean, it's a nightmare. And I'll say it might not even be better against Coppin State on Friday. I mean, you're talking about Black Friday. There's going to be a World Cup game on. Footballs. I mean, it might not even be, but trust me, by the time December 2nd rolls around, they're playing Illinois. It's going to be sold out. It's going to be packed, and you're pretty much going to see a packed house the rest of the season. But, you got to factor in a lot of things this time of year. Students just went home, just finished finals. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors right now. The first few games are pretty much, that's how they're going to be. I feel like for the rest of eternity now, you're just not going to have a lot of fans. But once December hits, it's pretty much going to be a packed house the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think we've kind of gotten a little spoiled since we've had some success. Now it's every game's selling out, and that's the way Maryland used to be. Maryland is, it is a basketball school at its heart and soul, even though lacrosse is very good as well. So it's going to be great to have another exciting opponent on the schedule that Rutgers fans can get hyped up to go see, because thankfully we don't have to play you guys on the road this year. We only play at Jersey Mike's. But I think that could grow to a true rivalry, is Rutgers and Maryland basketball.
Yeah, I think,
football, maybe not, but basketball.
Especially with Kevin Willard now, being a Jersey guy. So
yeah, definitely. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Richie. Was there anything else that you wanted to ask Scott before?
I got one more for you. I know this whole rivalry, not rivalry thing. I've been pitching this idea on Twitter, and I've been getting responses. What would you make the trophy if they made it a rivalry game? I said either a turnpike sign, put a fucking crab on it. I don't know, do something crazy, make an Old Bay, gold Old Bay.
I mean, Maryland's already got a crab rivalry trophy with Hopkins for lacrosse. So I feel like that's already done.
Navy, right?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know, not that. I don't know, like a.
It's a pretty sick looking trophy. I'm looking at it right now.
Maybe like an I-95 sign, something like that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you got to get.
I think
creative
that's what it would
here.
have to be.
The Ralph Friedgen Trophy, maybe. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to do something. I think they have to do this and just make it happen. I don't know what the hell you're going to do with it, but I think something along those lines.
Yeah, like a shiny like I-95 sign or something like that. That'll work. Yeah, and then I mean, I guess you can do the Turnpike. The Turnpike goes for like Delaware. Like I feel like the Turnpike wouldn't work. It's got to be 95.
It's funny you mention that because one of the top replies was just a gold picture of Delaware, and winner gets to keep Delaware. Like, here you go. Like, you get Delaware. Congrats.
I mean, I don't know. Having actually attended Delaware before going to Maryland, and my parents live out there now, so I'd be kind of cool with that. But I don't know how most Maryland fans would feel about that.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how Delaware people would feel
true,
about that either.
True.
Just like being used as a trophy. So Scott, where can Rutgers fans find your work and find you on social media?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can find the work on maryland.rivals.com, and then you can find me on Twitter at Terrapin Nation.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us and talking ball here. This has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast. Signing off. Scott, don't hop off though.